Long time no see, Evan. How's it going, man?
Good, man. I appreciate you having me on again. Obviously, a lot's happened, I think, since the last time I was on here. What was that, over 2 months ago now, end of August, something like that?
Yeah, it feels like 6 months ago looking back now, though. Man, it's been a crazy month.
Really has. Yeah, no, obviously mine's been in a lot of different places and there's been a lot of rumors and speculation. But things have gone, pretty quiet. We'll get into sort of the elephant in the room here, which is the XFL and USFL merger talks. Towards the end of the show, we'll get to some IFL stuff first. But yeah, man, I mean, announcement came out in like mid-September, and then everybody kind of got excited, and then everything went quiet. Haven't really heard a lot. We're still waiting on an announcement. We're recording this on November 14th. Something could come any day now. I think we're hoping that something comes in the next couple days. I think a lot of people are getting impatient and we're tired of those rumors and speculation, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. I don't think there's much I need to say because that sums it up perfectly, honestly. Oh man, it's wild how the little bit of info we actually got and the things that have spurred from that info since starting. That's the biggest kicker out of all this. And as soon as something official finally drops, I think everyone will be sleeping so much better at night, regardless of what even happens, to be honest with you.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's just so many things to think about when it comes to a merger. That there's so many of these little details that we're thinking about. Some people are just thinking about the bigger picture. So many people, impacted by this, obviously not just anybody who's on the media side, but, XFL and USFL staff. It really is interesting just to see, though, how much little information there is, lack of information, I should say, because I know several people, obviously, within the XFL, talk to a lot of people within the league on that side. And, they know just as much as I do, right? We're all just kind of sitting here waiting at this point. So it'll begin, it'll be interesting to see where this goes. But obviously a lot of different routes, different options, you're again, that's, I think, what has driven so many people's minds to go in so many different places.
Agreed. And like you said, we'll touch back on this shortly. I don't want to just blow out the whole show with this. Let's save it towards the end, but definitely, I mean, let's touch back on it because there's more I have to say as well, and I feel like we're just going to open that can and we're not going to be able to close it very easily,
Right.
So, man, in terms of let's just talk like you. How's things going for you? How's the IFL stuff going? And the new gig, the new team. I mean, just give me some updates and information.
Yeah, it's going great, man. Been a busy couple months since we last spoke. Getting things together, starting to piece together the roster, figuring out who's coming back, who isn't, what positions of need we're looking at. Just had our open tryout at the end of October. I guess that's a bit over 2 weeks ago now. I'll get into some more info regarding that in a minute, but ultimately, yeah, man, it's been good. It's been a fun experience. Love working for Coach Mike. Nobody else I'd rather be working for. And yeah, that's that.
That's awesome, dude. I'm excited to see what you do with the opportunity, honestly. And I've actually I had an athlete of the Nighthawks on last week.
Yep, Tarian Taylor. Yep, I'll
Yep,
get
yep,
into him
great.
shortly. Yep,
Yeah, he looks like he's going to be a stud for you, man. I'm very excited to see what he can do on that field.
100%.
In terms of like coming into it, so the season is going to be March to July. The schedule just dropped. I'm going to throw it up on the screen as well. And man, that's a busy schedule, man. There's a lot going on when you check it out.
Yep. So I think we've got 8 home games. I plan on being there for every home game. But yeah, that's one of the things, for people who maybe aren't as familiar with the IFL space. It's not like one of these traditional spring leagues, where it's a shortened season and you only get so many opportunities. IFL, the season is very lengthy, spans several months, from spring into summer. Several games being played, obviously added a couple new teams to the league this year, coming over from the NAL. So that's obviously expanded the schedule. But yeah, man, I mean, it's a busy time for sure. And I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it looks like it's going to be busy, dude. In terms of the spring football, XFL, USFL, and then the IFL, I mean, you're pretty confident in your ability to cover both leagues and do your job in the new league?
Well, that was my plan, and the merger talks have certainly brought that up again. Right now I'm just waiting to see what happens, like we all are. I mean, what happens with that merger, I think, will determine, some of my future. But to be honest, I can't elaborate much on that right now just because I don't have anything concrete. So we'll see. I mean, I'm always confident, in my abilities, and it would be really fun to, do the XFL stuff on one end and IFL stuff on the other end. I love both leagues and both opportunities, but yeah, it's going to be busy one way or the other. So,
Yeah. I remember all the games I attended, you were very at home there in Houston. Anytime I saw you, you were hanging out with the team, doing things, going places, staying till the last man left. So that's why I asked that. I know you were very dedicated to that position.
yeah, and I still am. I want to be as dedicated as possible to whatever I do. I mean, with the IFL opportunity, I certainly might lean into that a bit more. Even if the XFL is still going on, because those are my players, and I take that very personally. And I want to be there for them as much as possible. A lot of things to balance, right? I'm still in school too, so that's another thing that's another thing to figure out, right? When you're young and you're doing all this stuff. But honestly, man, I'm just living in the moment, and I'm excited to see where things take me.
I'm very excited for you as well, man. And your title, let me get this right. Assistant Director of Player Personnel. That is correct.
Yep.
Okay. Just making sure. Sometimes I flip up the words between, so that's why I always make sure.
Understood.
But man, you are going to be busy, I feel like. Especially, are you going to be taking a full load of classes at the same time, like a 12-hour semester?
Yep, I'll have 5 classes. Some of them will be online. I took some online classes this semester as well, just to kind of even things out. I'm doing a lot of scouting, watching a lot of film, so want to make sure I have time for that, of course. So when I schedule courses here in college, I obviously take time to think about, am I going to have enough time to do everything that I want to do? And with the schedule that I have set now, everything should be good. So.
Awesome, dude. Good to hear, man. Because I look forward to your work in the IFL realm of things. I mean, I'm going to need noticeable, knowledgeable people like you to bring that information, just so I know what's going on. So I
Of
look
course.
forward to seeing what all happens, dude, and what you guys make happen there in Vegas. Honestly, it seems like a great experience, and it seems like it's going to have a lot of momentum this year, and things are going to just take off.
Yeah, man. I mean, I'll tell you right now, this is year 3 of the organization's existence. Nighthawks played their first season in 2022. Year 3 is a big year, not just in IFL, but in pro football, whether you're a player, a coach, a team, personnel guy like myself. Obviously I'm new to the organization. I wasn't there for the first 2 years, but, we obviously want to make some strides in year 3. The first 2 seasons, didn't had losing records in both of those seasons, and we obviously want to improve on that. The first 2 years, it's a lot of development. As much as it is the on-field product, you're also establishing yourself in that market. You got a lot of things you need to test out, right? It's kind of an experimental time, but by year 3, you're kind of settled down, and now it really is, obviously the goal is to win a championship, which is the goal every year, but more so, once you know that you're in the right place and you're doing the right things.
Yes, sir. Yeah, Mike G said, getting into the IFL, you're definitely someone I'll be paying attention to, and I'm right there with him, man. Seriously.
Yeah, man. I mean, I'll just add on a quick point. Vegas is a fun market. I take that into consideration as well when I talk to people about the league. IFL has a lot of small market teams. I think about Iowa, Sioux Falls. Some of these teams that are more out of the way. They're more local, but here in Vegas, we're capitalizing on a very a fast growing sports market, I should say. A lot of not only teams in that city, but there's a lot of winning. Golden Knights, who we're obviously affiliated with, we have the same owner, Bill Foley. Golden Knights are coming off Stanley Cup in the NHL. WNBA team, the Las Vegas Aces, just won a title. So there's a lot going on there, man. And, we want to contribute to that as well.
Sounds like a winning culture is being bred, man. No doubt.
Exactly. Yep.
I'm wondering if those Vipers will end up back there in Vegas.
Yeah, man. I mean, that's I will say this, Nighthawks, last year, again, this was prior to my time working there, but even with the Vipers in town, being, part of an outdoor pro football league as opposed to an arena league, we still pulled in, pretty good numbers, competing with them. And part of the reason is, I think even though we're indoor ball, I mean, we have a really nice venue over there at the Dollar Loan Center. That was new along with the team in 2022, shared with the Henderson Silver Knights, which are also an affiliate of the Golden Knights. It all ties in. But, it's a really nice venue, really great place to just go, with your family. And I think it's a lot more enjoyable than Cashman Field. No shade to the XFL, right? But, I mean, when players are talking about, the conditions there and the quality, something's up. So.
Yeah, agreed. And we won't get detailed into it, but if they do come back, they could definitely join and use that winning the culture and jump on board, no doubt.
Right.
Now, I'll tell you, you're talking about the athletes. Is there anyone notable, even on your team or on other teams, that we should really, be watching for this season? Because I'll tell you, man. I've had a couple guys already from different IFL teams come on the show. They're excited, man. They're ready to roll.
100%. Now, yeah, I've got a list here of a couple guys I want to talk about. So starting with our open tryout, I brought that up. We had that at the end of October. The one guy we got from that was Justin Hollins, wide receiver. He bounced around a lot in college. I think he started off at Boise State, transferred to Oregon, and then eventually ended up at Arizona State for his final year in 2021. So never really found his footing. Guy transferred a lot. That's always something you look at when you're scouting. But he had a good showing at the tryout. I believe he had a 4.41 40, something in the low 4.4s, and I think he had something in the low 4.3s unofficially at one of his pro days. So good speed, good body. Just a guy that, again, doesn't have a lot to show necessarily on tape, just because in college, he was bouncing around so much, never really found the right opportunity. But a guy like that, he's a raw athlete, still needs to improve on some things, but that's what we're bringing him in for, right? IFL, just like the XFL and all these other spring leagues, whether they're, indoor football or outdoor football, we're giving somebody an opportunity to improve their game. And the fact that we were able to find him, at an open tryout, which is, more of a local thing, right? That's something that we take great pride in. So excited to have him on board. And then a couple other guys I'll mention. Well, let's talk about Tarian Taylor for a minute. Because you had him on the show last week. So I haven't actually gotten a chance to interact with him yet. He kind of got there, right as I was getting on board, getting settled in, starting the scouting process. So he was one of Mike's guys. But, he's a great player, came out of Division II Tuskegee, had 2 games with 200-plus rushing yards last season, and I think he scored 4 touchdowns in one of those games, averaged 6.4 yards per carry. So an extremely efficient guy. Really, I think the only knock on his game, well, not necessarily his game, but, he's 5'7". He was listed at 5'7", so he's, a bit of a smaller guy, and obviously in terms of translating that to at least the outdoor pro game, might not have that edge, but, him coming into a league like the IFL, I think is great because, we look for, small kind of shifty backs, guys that are able to catch out of the backfield. Obviously, you're looking for somebody very dynamic, and he certainly brings that to the table. So Tarian, we're excited for. The other running back that we've got, Antonio Wimbush, I honestly might be more excited for, just because we brought him in from Iowa, and he was a bright spot on the Barnstormers team last year that struggled a bit, right? But he was a bright spot. Played at another Division II school, Carson Newman. Just again another smaller shifty guy. Again, can catch the ball well, and that's something that we really look for, right? Because IFL, you only got a 25-man roster, so if you want to make a team, you got to be able to do a couple different things, and that's something that I think he brings to the table very well. So you got the running backs. The other group I'll touch on here really quickly is the defensive line. I'm really excited, about that group. Brought in 3 guys that were in CFL camps. So we have Kashawn Moore, who played at Hampton and was in camp with the Saskatchewan Roughriders. We have Nick Andrews, who played at Bethel in Tennessee, which is an NAIA school. And keep in mind, this guy was one of the top NAIA prospects. So really excited to have him.
Yeah, I know that name as well. That one rung out for sure.
Yep, he's been around. Me and him had been talking, earlier in the year, about XFL stuff, and happy to have him out now in the IFL. But he ultimately signed a contract with the Edmonton Elks and then got cut from there. Now we have him on board, so maybe he can get that outdoor opportunity again, hopefully. And then the last guy, from that defensive line group that I'll touch on that was in CFL camp was CJ Wright from Georgia Southern, who spent time with the Montreal Alouettes team that's going to be playing in the Grey Cup this weekend. I'll be there for that, by the way, so really excited to see that team in person. But yeah, CJ was up there in Montreal, excited to have him on board. So defensive line is definitely a group to look out for, doing the work in the trenches, right? They don't always get the credit, but definitely some athletes there, and we're excited to see their development.
Sounds like a great group of guys, man. And I'll tell you, from talking with Torian and watching his film and seeing the way he is, I think you'll appreciate him greatly. I don't think his size is going to hold him back there. And like you said, maybe in a pro outdoor league at some capacity. But man, that guy, he's small, but he is mighty, dude. He's just wide,
tiny but mighty, man. That's what they say.
Big body, he can bounce off and redirect. I mean, I was very impressed watching this film, and like I said, that just talking to him, dude, super excited, very humble guy. Not, he's not big headed. He knows he's a badass, but he doesn't act like it. So that's what's the best part about him, honestly. Yeah, dude, sounds like you got a great group, and I mean, you still got plenty of time to still pursue other athletes, correct?
Absolutely. I mean, I'll tell you right now, in the world of personnel and scouting, like, there's a lot of guys I've talked to. I'm not going to name names, but certain guys I've looked at that signed on with other IFL teams, right? Just with the way, obviously, you're working with a small roster size, you can't sign everybody, and that's just one of those logistical things. There's going to be a lot of good athletes in this league next year. Some of them are going to be rookies, right? Guys that I'm looking at that are coming into the league for the first time, but then you're going to have some other guys, who have been playing IFL football for a long time. The last thing I'll touch on in terms of players, with Vegas, a couple of veteran guys I wanted to mention or shout out. So we traded for Derek Jones from the Frisco Fighters. That was a while ago now, but I'm going to talk about it anyway. He provides kind of the sort of, we got a couple guys, again, I'll get into it, in terms of veteran presence, but, he was drafted into the NFL, right? 6th round to the New York Jets in 2017. So one of those guys that has the NFL pedigree, and you don't see that a lot in the IFL, right? I mean, this is, you're talking about a league where, you're only making so much money, and, it's just guys, who were at the NFL level, some of those trickle down into, XFL, USFL, CFL first. But a guy like Derek, he's older now. I think he's maybe 28, so he's getting up there in age. But yeah, I mean, played for the Jets for 2 seasons, was drafted by them, played in XFL 2020 with the Seattle Dragons, also spent time in CFL and USFL between, I think it was Calgary and then New Orleans with the Breakers. So, he's definitely a guy that's, again, he's been around the block. He can help out the younger guys. And, he was looking for a fresh start. So brought him in from Frisco and excited to see what he can do. The other guy I'll talk about is Caleb Pauley, who's 32. So he's definitely up there. He'll tell you, 32, doesn't play like he's 32. You know, he still feels young and looks young, and it's all good. But yeah, man, Caleb, you know, I had an opportunity when I went out to the open tryout there in Vegas, got to meet him for the first time, you know, and you can tell he's really a leader. You know, he's played, you know, since, well, pro football since 2014, I believe, came out of East Central Division II school in Oklahoma. Spent time with the Buffalo Bills, and then eventually went on to the CFL with the Saskatchewan Roughriders. And he played, you know, for Mike Davis, who, you know, worked personnel in Saskatchewan for 4 years, right, is with us now. There was that pre-existing connection. So they've always been tight. You know, he played in Saskatchewan for 3 years, and then had a bit of arena experience, I believe, maybe prior to coming into the CFL, but was with Saskatchewan, was with Ottawa, was with Edmonton, and then, you know, finally got him out in Vegas this year. So excited to see him. You know, again, really, he brings that, you know, veteran element that we like to see. And, you know, in the IFL, it's tough now with veterans because you only have 8 veteran spots, I think, 7 or 8.
Oh, wow. Wow.
You know, and
I
that's
wasn't
guys
aware
that
of
are,
that.
right, and that's guys that are 28 years and above. So there's certainly a pivot towards, you know, younger guys now. I think the veteran rule used to be, and this was prior to, you know, my time in the league, but I think it used to be, you know, a veteran was, it didn't matter how old you were. It was just, I think, 3+ years of, you know, time in the IFL. But yeah, now it's different. You know, now regardless of, you know, whether you've been in the IFL for X many years or, you know, you're playing in the IFL for the first time, if you're, you know, above the age of 28, you know, there's only so many slots for those guys. So, you know, again, when you look at those vet guys, you know, you have to be very careful, right? Because there's only so many spots. But, you know, Caleb obviously knows the game really well, and you'll understand that, you know, just talking to him. And, you know, he's still looking for another opportunity outdoors at 32. And, you know, obviously we'll see what happens with the merger, right? And we'll see, you know, where he could go. But, you know, he was in the CFL as recently as last year, you know, and I don't think there's anything stopping him. So I'll always pull for him to get an opportunity. You know, obviously, I think, you know, any guy that we bring in, you know, we're all about player development. We want guys to get opportunities and to advance to the next level, wherever that be. Excuse me. You know, we had a couple guys last year, again, before I was there. The 2 most notable ones I'd say that got, you know, pro outdoor opportunities again. You had KD Cannon, the receiver who played, you know, in the XFL this year between DC Defenders and Orlando Guardians, and then so he played in 2022, right? So year 1. And then the other guy that played there in year 1 with the Nighthawks was Coney Ely, you know, who,
Oh, yeah.
longtime
I'm familiar
NFL
with him.
veteran, you know, high draft pick, picked off Peyton Manning in the Super Bowl. I think that's what he's most known for when he was with the Panthers. You know, played in the IFL, and then went up to CFL with the Edmonton Elks. And he's, you know, played there this year too. So, you know, again, the opportunity is there if you can take it. You know, we obviously have a lot of connections. You know, you come in, you get your film, and then, you know, we'll see what happens. We understand that, you know, as much as it's about, you know, winning a championship with our existing guys, you know, that's what we're bringing them in for. You know, this might not be the long game for a lot of guys. You know, guys are going to want to move up and make more money doing something else. And I respect that. You know, the reality is, you know, when you come into the IFL, a lot of the times, at least for some of these players, maybe not all of them, depending on your circumstance, but for a lot of these guys, it's kind of, I've kind of coined it like the last chance you of pro football, you know, where IFL, it's kind of make or break. Like you either come here or, you know, you're going to be at home working another job. So again, it's really about what you do with the opportunity, and maybe you create a career in the IFL for several seasons, or you just come in for a couple games or one full season, and then you get the call up outdoors. Either way, you know, there's a lot of different directions it could go, and a lot of situations that could benefit guys. I think really any circumstance, you know, coming into the IFL, you know, a player will benefit from. So that's why I'm excited to be a part of this, you know, more than anything. And I believe that we have a lot of guys right now, you know, whether they've been in a pro outdoor league before or not, that can get that opportunity.
Yeah. I mean, that the opportunity seems like it's there, and many of the men I've talked to, that's what they treat it like. It's not like we're going to play around. This is like a tryout for work. This is a serious event.
Well,
But I know a lot of the guys actually work real jobs during that time also.
Absolutely, and you kind of have to, because again, IFL game checks typically aren't that much money. You're only making so much during the season. So yeah, a lot of guys are balancing things, and sometimes the deciding factor, as crazy as it sounds, when you're recruiting a guy just with the money situation, I mean, if they've got a family or something, they've got a kid. That can sometimes make it challenging, and that's sometimes why guys like they don't want to leave what they already have somewhere else, even if they're fit. And I totally understand that. I'm like, don't if you've got something established in another place, don't give that up if you don't feel like it's right. I mean, I can't make that decision for you, but it's certainly something that you have to think about. The one thing too that I'll say about the IFL game in general, not just about our team in Vegas, but some guys come into the IFL, especially maybe some guys that have been in the NFL before, and they come in thinking it's going to be easy. They come in thinking that just because of their pedigree, I played at a big college, whatever, you come in and you dominate. But the reality is, IFL is almost a different sport. Indoor football, arena football, whatever it is, it's almost a different game, right? So you have to get adjusted to the pace, and it's 8v8. It's not traditional. There's a lot of things that make it different, right? And you'll see that when you watch games on TV, on YouTube, wherever it be. Some of these guys come in, from these pro leagues, and they don't have, the same impact maybe that you would expect from a guy that's, well known or kind of has the name brand or whatever you want to put it. You know what I'm talking about. But yeah, man, I mean, and the same thing happens up in Canada too, in the CFL. I mean, we talk about, some IFL obviously has a partnership with the XFL, but we send a lot of guys to Canada too. Guys will go up to Canada thinking, that it's just going to be a walk in the park and you can get a roster spot, no problem. But, CFL's been around for a long time, and they have some players up there, just like we have in the IFL too, that have been around for several seasons, multiple years. These guys are lifers in the league, and, they play a different speed of the game. So, you'll get that too. And again, I think that's something that's overlooked, right? Like, just because, the IFL isn't, it doesn't get the same traction as some of these other pro leagues. I mean, the level of competition is still extremely high. I don't care,
Sure.
I don't care what money you're making. I think that the level of competition in this league is extremely high. And you'll see that, if you watch it on a regular basis. I know any arena fan can vouch for that. And it was, I'm not just saying that for the IFL nowadays, but back when you had, the AFL in its prime, in the mid 2000s, when those games were being broadcast on NBC, people saw that it's a rough, aggressive and fast game. And if you're not ready for it, it'll come at you very quickly.
No doubt. So let me ask you this. So say you sign a guy, he gets the opportunity to go to the XFL, the Sea Dragons want him.
Sure.
They're allowed to sign him off that roster, and then you're allowed to replace that spot on the roster. Just trying to understand a little better.
Yeah. So the way that from what I've heard, what I've been figuring out as an assistant is, if a guy gets an opportunity with the XFL, we can replace him. So let me back up a bit. We have an advancing list of guys that
Understood.
are, moving on to other pro leagues, right? They're moving up. They have interest from an XFL, CFL, USFL team, whatever it be. Those guys can move up. They can do whatever they want. We can bring in another guy in the time being. But the most important part here that I should really touch on is we retain rights to that player. So
that's what I'm interested in.
Yes. Coney Ely, right? Coney Ely's up in the CFL right now in Edmonton. I don't know. I don't think he's ever coming back, to the IFL just at his age. He's got his outdoor opportunity again. I think he's moved on, but we still have rights to him. So if he, for whatever reason wanted to come back to the IFL, we could say, we still have rights to him. Whether or not there's an expiration period on those rights, I don't know. Like if a guy, leaves another league and wants to come back, like, whether or not we have to do something within a certain number of days, that's above me. That's something you'd have to ask our coach, Mike Davis, about. Again, he knows everything, man. I mean, that's why I love working for Mike, because any question I have, even if it's this little niche thing about personnel, he'll know. But the bottom line is, yeah, so, a guy can advance, and, and that's also too, this is one thing, I'm glad you brought this up, because compared to, even, well, really any level of the outdoor game, whether it's NFL, CFL, XFL, we've had a lot of guys over, the past 2 years that have advanced, and it was somewhat unexpected. I mean, if you ask Mike, I think he'd say that, we lost more guys than we expected to other leagues, which is at the end of the day a good thing, right? But you have to replace that during the season. So it's important, when you're doing personnel in the IFL, you want to have a short list of guys, that maybe you've been in contact with, that you can just call up on maybe a basis of a couple of days, like, hey, this dude, he's injured. He got a call, to another league. Can you come in, and do your thing, right? Because we've obviously already looked at the tape and all that. We've got your info. So yeah, it's fast paced in that sense, right? Like you never know who could go when, and I think roster turnover, really in any alternate league, I guess roster turnover happens very quickly. Yep. I mean, CFL, like those are typically 1-year contracts. XFL, it was like, it was technically 2 years. It was like 1 year with an option, if guys, because you're seeing guys from the XFL go to the NFL and then now they're back in the XFL, a couple of them. So yeah, it kind of gets complicated, right, with all that roster management stuff. But the bottom line is, guys can advance. We can replace them. Obviously my job is finding the talent. So, just because you have a 25-man roster, in the IFL on opening day, my job's far from done. I'm probably going to be doing just as much now in these months leading up to the season when it comes to finding guys and looking at their film as I am during the season, when we start, maybe losing guys or changing things, other pro leagues come calling and, there's variables to that, but those are things I don't determine. So.
Understood. Yeah, I was just curious if if the opportunity was still there for them to move up, and I didn't really understand fully if they could or not. On another note, I'll tell you, Coney Ely, I actually played against him in high school when he was a sophomore, I believe.
Really?
And yep, down in Southeast Missouri. Yeah, and he played for New Madrid, and they thumped our heads real good that year. But yeah, I had to note that. He's almost a local hero amongst like the Southeast Missouri area. A lot of people know him, know his name. He's had a lot of camps, a lot of interaction. So
absolutely. I mean, look, I'll tell you,
really good.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, when I bring up, players that have been through our program, one of the first guys I always say is Coney Ely, and usually that's the one that kind of rings a bell because again, and the last thing I'll maybe touch on, in regards of, scouting at the IFL level is, we've had guys that have gone through our program, not just the ones that I mentioned, that have gone, elsewhere. Like, I talked about Coney Ely, I talked about Katie Cannon, but like we had Darius Geis last year, who played at LSU, was one of the, great SEC running backs, had some phenomenal performances here at LSU. And, obviously ran into some legal troubles, which kept him out of pro football for a while. Was only, and injuries too. Keep in mind when he was with Washington, he was always banged up and really only ended up being effective in a couple games. But, we had him last year. We had Robert Nkumdiche, defensive lineman, former first-round pick, a couple years ago. He came in as well. So there's been guys, that have gone through there with that pedigree. And obviously those names are going to ring a bell, right? I can talk to somebody about those guys. They're going to know who that is as opposed to some of our, smaller school players. But, again, those guys, it's not guaranteed success. I mean, I enjoy the point that I'm really getting to here. The last thing that I want to talk to about, the scouting and personnel here at the IFL level, you're scouting a different type of player essentially. And what I mean by that is, you're looking for really the diamonds in the rough. And you'll hear about that, in the XFL and some of these other leagues. But really in arena football, you are digging deep into the basket, I guess you'd say. You're going, really FCS and below. I mean, majority of guys I've looked at, it's FCS, Division II, and then you mix in a couple Division III and NAIA guys as well. But, that's just the level you're looking at. That's the most likely player that you can get. And again, right, like, you can bring in these FBS guys, these Power 5 guys, who, maybe have touched the NFL at some point or another. But for me personally, I really enjoy looking at the dudes who, performed well at a small college, maybe didn't get the recognition after they went out of college, in terms of getting an opportunity at the pro level. And then I get to, help award that to them. And, obviously there's been a lot of success in the IFL with guys from that, small school pedigree. So excited again to see just how the roster develops. And, a lot of the guys, again, that we're bringing in right now, they're all, from a unique background, and every one of them is unique. That's what's great about working in player personnel, is every guy has a story. Everybody's different, but you can all come together, and I get to play a role in determining who gets to come together. So it's all very fun, it's all very unique, and ultimately all that leads up to what should be a very exciting season here in 2024.
Yes, sir. I'm ready. I haven't done much indoor or arena stuff personally, but I look forward to it this year. It's going to be an adventure for sure. My only disappointment is that locally there's not much around me to attend. If I wanted to go to something, I'm going to have to travel quite a ways to get there.
Right.
But otherwise, looking forward to it, man. And it's great that you guys give those men the opportunity, and whether it be to actually play and make a career there, or just move up, or hey, we're just giving it another go, see what we got left in the tank, whatever it takes. It's awesome that that kind of rings back out through the XFL USFL landscape, and that's what it's all about at the end of the day. Everybody gets the opportunity, everybody gets a chance, and I mean, as long as you have a resume and you're athletic and you're real, you're not just out there posting videos.
Right.
So let me ask you one more question, and this may not be your scape and scope of things, but curious, whenever you go and say you're setting up your offense, your defense there, are you building your teams around these seasonal players, these guys that you talked about have all the experience? I mean, are you really trying to build your offense around 2 or 3 men, or is this like a scheme where we're just coming in and teaching the whole playbook and next man up mentality? That does that make sense in terms of a question?
It does. I think the best way I can answer that is we're just trying to be fair, right? I mean, when I, evaluate a player, I mean, we care about, or I care about especially, I mean, film and all that, but, we're looking at background as well, and character and all those things. I mean, personally, like I said, there's a type of player that I enjoy scouting, but I have a no stone unturned policy. So I'll look anywhere. I mean, hell, I've looked at, I mean, I'm not going to give anything away, obviously, but I've looked at guys.
Yeah, don't do that.
No, I won't do that at all. But, I've looked at guys, some that have played in Mexico, some guys that have played in Europe, some guys that have played in, smaller arena leagues. And then obviously, some dudes that, like I pointed out earlier, have touched the NFL, maybe have, been around in the XFL or the CFL. Again, there's just so many places, where you can find players, and, never stop looking is kind of my, my policy, right? I mean, no stone unturned, never stop looking. There's always going to be players available that will be ready to play for you. There are so many guys, that come out of college every year that don't get the right look. It's an endless list. We'll never get bored of looking at guys. So, I think some people, sometimes they'll say, well, isn't it hard trying to find guys who want to play in the IFL? Man, guys are, when I reach out to a guy, trying to recruit him, these guys get really excited, most of them about an opportunity like this. Playing pro football, even if you're only making, again, X many dollars per season, at the end of the day, it's still pro football. Not a lot of guys, get to do that. And, as many opportunities as there are now, with all these leagues that are surfacing again, whether it's pro outdoor, pro indoor, there's still never going to be enough spots to get everybody. So, you do have to be selective. But yeah, ultimately, like I said before, I'm open to anything, and no stone unturned. So, I'll get people, sending me guys from every which way, and I appreciate any help I can get in that regard too.
I like it. One more point before we move on. Mike G said, has Evan seen Toro's stair workout? Did you watch the show last week by chance?
I watched a bit of it. I did not see this stair workout, but I'm intrigued now, so I'll definitely have to get back to that.
I'll pull it up.
Or you can show it to me now too. Yeah, that'd be great.
It's on his YouTube. He
says that sounds like a running back thing. Immediately, I hear stair workout. I think, big quads, all that. Oh yeah.
Yeah, he says he works out and he goes up there and he runs, and it's pretty. It's too much for me. Let's put it that way.
Oh yeah, I mean,
but it looks awesome.
Sometimes I'm glad I'm on the scouting side and not the playing side. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah, I'm too old for that myself now.
Right.
All right. So let's check it out real quick. He says he goes out here often. It's 5-10 minutes from where he lives currently.
Okay.
So that's him right there.
Yep.
That elevation, man, that altitude.
Yeah, no kidding.
You can see how stocky
Yeah, that
he
looks
is, though,
good.
dude.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
He's wide bodied, and that guy's ready to roll. Check out his YouTube, man. It's got some good stuff. He doesn't have a whole lot of stuff on there, but he's got enough to get more of an idea of him if you haven't already.
For sure.
But when you do talk to him, just tell him I said hi, and just so he knows. Because I told him I knew you, and he was like, I don't know who he is yet because we haven't met anybody. We haven't.
Yeah, well,
went
that's the
anywhere. I'm like, oh,
reality.
you will.
Exactly. I mean, even myself, I mean, we're signing guys, I'm communicating with guys, but again, a lot of the work that I do is behind the scenes. I'm only going to be there in person so many times. A lot of it's just, communication, email, Twitter, this and that. So, ultimately, while I have a lot to say, and people know that I'm well-spoken, a lot of this stuff is, just quiet, behind the scenes work. So yeah, I'm not surprised. I mean, I turned up there at our open tryout, in Vegas, and that was the first time that I'd really met anybody besides Mike. So, again, excited to work with those guys, obviously, in the future, no doubt. It's a great group of not just players, but also coaches that we have. But yeah, man, I mean, when you're doing personnel, like, Caleb Hawley, who, the receiver that I was talking about, he was telling me, like, when he went to Saskatchewan, he had no idea that Mike was the guy who actually recruited him there and that looked at his film and really gave him the opportunity, because it's all behind the scenes. So eventually he found out, and obviously that created a relationship, and they're still very close to this day. But it's just kind of funny how that works. Sometimes you never know who, what's going on behind the scenes.
True story. And it's just as important as anything else. I mean, if you don't find these guys, you're not going to have a team. So
Right.
I can see the importance in it, no doubt. Let's see. We had one question from DeMarcus, and Richard, I see your question. We're going to talk about the merger here soon, I promise. But DeMarcus said, any QBs we should maybe watch out for coming up to the XFL season?
I mean, I've had this question asked a couple times, in regards of guys coming out of college. I would have to make a list in terms of guys, that are free agents right now, or maybe guys that are, in the IFL. I mean, I'll tell you right now, our quarterback in Vegas, Joe Mancuso, he's a guy I'm really excited to see this season. Maybe he's a guy that gets an outdoor opportunity. He was previously with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers in the CFL, pretty low on their depth chart, but kind of a guy that was up there to learn, and understand things. And, now he's starting to demonstrate that, at the IFL game. Last year we had, again, this was before I was here, but last year we had Joe Mancuso and DeQuan Neal. Neal just signed with Bay Area, the Panthers. So, Joe, yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see what he does. I'm kind of just plugging my quarterback at this point, so maybe that's not answering your question. But look, man, like I said earlier, to give you somewhat of a more direct answer, look, there's a lot of guys, and if you watch any college ball, I mean, I had a question asked me the other day, about guys that are currently in college, that could come out and play, spring football in 2024. I don't know if there's a lot of those guys. I mean, I know last year, like in the XFL, like there was only, maybe 3 guys that had played college football in 2022 that signed on to the league. And one of them was a quarterback, Harrison Frost from West Georgia, who was with the Sea Dragons. But, I mean, I think a lot of the quarterbacks that you're going to want to look at are guys, that played college, again, in 2022 and that have been free agents this year. There's a couple, that I can think of. Again, some of them might be my prospects, so I'm not going to say their names. They might be on my list, but again, a lot of talent out there, man, no doubt.
Agreed. I think what a name that sticks out to me is a guy like TJ Hilliard, the straight baller. And, I really don't understand how he's not in like the XFL, USFL, whatever, because dude's a beast. So that's kind of who sticks out in my brain when I think of that. But I can see your end of it, and like it's like an unlimited pool of people there that it's hard to pick and choose, especially when that depicts your strategy and what you're trying to do going forward for your team. So definitely understand.
I mean, let's put it this way. Last thing on this topic, I don't know how many. I mean, between Power 5 through NAIA, I don't know how many schools that is, but it's a lot of schools. Every one of those schools has a starting quarterback. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe all those guys aren't ready for the pro game. Maybe all those guys obviously aren't eligible, to come out in the draft. But, that's a lot of QBs that have some sort of playing time and experience. And I can guarantee you, it's not just me, but any personnel guy, whether it's IFL, XFL, CFL, those guys are getting evaluated. Again, a lot of it happens behind the scenes. You don't hear about it, but it's happening.
Understood. Well, I appreciate that, man. That's a lot of information regarding that IFL. I mean, it gives me a lot better understanding just from that conversation right there. But especially, I mean, I knew there was a 25-man roster, but I was not aware of the limited seasoned vet amount.
Yeah, well, that's new. I mean, at least in terms of the wording as to what is a veteran. And I'll say, that's a blessing and a curse, because there's some guys that you want to bring in that are experienced, but, they're kind of right at that 28 mark. And then there's some guys who, I mean, again, the idea is that you want to be looking at younger guys. I mean, typically now, 26 is kind of like, if you're older than that, there's going to have to be some sort of special, like, you better be doing something good if you're over 26, because again, just with the way, things have worked out, we really have to pivot towards younger guys. But I don't mind that. Again, like I kept saying earlier, there's a lot of guys that are, 23, 24 coming out of these small colleges that, just don't get the right representation. And, my goal is to go find them and give them a chance to play.
Yes, sir. Yeah. From my interviewing and from my talking to multiple different arena or smaller professional athletes, COVID really screwed them up, man. COVID really messed a lot of these guys' career up. And whether it be just getting film or the play time they need and opportunities just didn't come during that time. I mean, it was a rough thing.
One thing too, I mean, if you want to tie in the COVID situation into this, is when it comes to scouting, guys that are, ready to come out of college, fortunately we're kind of at the end now, because COVID granted everybody an extra year of eligibility, right?
Yep.
So you get a lot of guys now, a lot of these, like, guys that are just like, it seems like they're older than they should be. You don't really know, what's happened. Again, that it's just, we're finally getting through the end of that. I think by next year, most of those guys should be pretty much cleared out and on to the next phase in life, whether that be pro football or something else. But that does make it difficult. I mean, not going to name names here per usual, but I was talking to a guy, just last week from a Division II school, and I thought he was already out of school. And he's like, nah, man, I got my last game, this coming weekend. And I was like, oh, well, I mean, look, you're still a good player. Like, I'll keep you on my list. But again, like, that's one of those things you really have to go digging for. And a lot of guys, go back, and it becomes complicated quite fast. And, it's a complicated process, especially with the small school dudes too, because, just getting film for those guys. I mean, unless you're, directly reaching out to them and communicating with them, like, that stuff's not just available. Guys kind of create their own stuff, and it's a much more personalized process. So again, when it comes to, finding players, you really do have to hunt them down, and you don't have to, you should not be afraid to speak up, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's what, I mean, to be honest with you, many of these guys just reach out to me just to be like, hey, share my stuff. Can you tell me this?
Yep.
Can you do this?
Yeah.
I can't imagine being on your end.
Yep.
Like,
I've had a lot of guys in that boat too, all the time.
I'm sure there's so many that especially once they find out your position and what you're doing, I can't even imagine, man. So
look,
that's why I like getting your perspective.
I'll say this much too, like I said, I communicate with a lot of guys, right? You have to reach out, inquire about interest when it comes to these players. But at the same time, I have a lot of dudes where I'm not actively finding them. They're coming to me. I mean, my DMs are flooded, man. I can't, I'm not going to show you my my Twitter DM threads, but every day, my inbox, it's just, it fills up real quick, and I got to go through stuff. And, I tell guys, I'm always looking, right? I can't guarantee anything, but I'm always looking, and I will, as crazy as it sounds, when I get a lot of these requests, I'll go over film, right? I can tell pretty quickly, whether or not a guy is ready, but, sometimes you will find these gems just by, somebody reaching out. Like, I remember during the XFL season, there was a really cool story where, Hakeem Butler, who ended up playing with the Battlehawks, reached out to Anthony Beck via Twitter and was like,
Yep.
"Hey, coach, like just wanted to, touch base on an XFL opportunity and see what this is all about." And then he goes on to be one of the best receivers in the league and lands another opportunity with the Pittsburgh Steelers. So, you never know what things might lead to, man. And that just goes, not just in football, obviously, but in any aspect of life.
Shoot your shot, as long as you're being respectful and like I said, you have a legitimate resume. Shoot that shot, whether it's a job, athletics, good food, hell, whatever it is, just do your thing, But yeah,
Right.
man, I appreciate that insight. We'll move on. And we'll get on the dicey topic here.
Yeah.
But once again, before we move on officially, I want to say good luck, man. If we don't speak again, which I'm sure we will before the season kicks off, good
Right.
luck. Do your thing. I mean, I'm happy for you, and I look forward to seeing what you guys accomplish there in Vegas.
Oh man, I appreciate that. I'll say, if anybody's got free time, tune into our games, man. They'll be on YouTube live streamed, as all the IFL games are.
Cool.
Tune in, man. As much fan support as we can get, I got to promote that just as much as I promote my players. So,
Understood. Well, what do you think, man? The spring football world right now is in shambles. Whether
now
this
it gets
guy,
juicy. Now we were
or
just talking logistics, but now it's getting in. Now it's getting deep, huh?
yeah. It always depends on who you know, though. who's got the most current, the 10 man or the 12 man. What's it going to be right now? But yeah, man. In terms of the updates, I'm not really going to say there has been any updates. I mean, we are still just waiting, and that's what I feel like. We've been just waiting for 7 weeks, something like that, 8 weeks now. I mean, it seems like since this first dropped, I mean, we've got a trickle of info, but really, who knows what the hell is going on? In terms of the 2024 season, if we don't get something released soon, in my opinion, it's not going to be very easy to have this merged league, and that's just me talking. But what do you think so far of just the information? And I don't want to get down to the detailed rumors because I don't want to dish out more information. But I mean, do you think this stuff is valid? Is this merger happening, or are we going to have a separate season next year, as it should be?
Well, it's a great question. Without diving into any of the rumor and speculation stuff, initially, when you read the room, when I say read the room, I mean, obviously I have a lot of connections within the XFL. Just talking to guys. Look, nobody really knows anything, of course. We've been over that, but you read the room and it did seem pretty official. I mean, look, the leagues came out themselves after the initial report. I think it was from Axios came out. And they said, we intend to merge, and the statement was there, and they had the PR release and the whole bit. It was very official, and it looked like it was going to happen. They specifically said for 2024.
Yep.
But now there's some things being floated around, and again, we're not getting into rumors and speculation, but just based off what we have, maybe it happens this year, maybe it doesn't. Maybe the entire thing falls through, and there's no merger at all, whether it's 2024 or 2025. So it's a good question. Again, with the amount of evidence that we have right now, which is little to none, that's a hard conclusion to make. But I think part of that just stems from people. People are waiting, right? People have been waiting for a while on this, and even myself included, I'm getting a bit impatient. I'm kind of. I was telling you before we started the stream, right? Like, every morning I wake up and I get on my phone, and right before I open Twitter, I just close my eyes. And I'm like, is today going to be the day where things just blow up? And my phone, if it's not already, filled with film and people trying to, get in touch with me about opportunities, then it's going to start blowing up about, well, what do you think about this and that? And what's going to happen here? And, I don't know. So at this point, I will say, while there might be some uncertainty, maybe amongst some people at least, as to whether or not this is viable for 2024. I think that's something we all question to begin with. But even if there is still some uncertainty, we're sitting here recording this on the evening of November 14th. It's been close to 2 months since the announcement. The word is that, any day now, really, could be this week, could be next next week. There was a couple different ideas floated around. November 13th, which was yesterday, the Monday. That was one that was going around and gained some traction. Really, I think just any time before Thanksgiving, to be honest, is a good a good way to look at it. So that's about that's like 9 days. So I don't know. I mean, it feels like we're getting close to something. We have to be, right? Because the reality is, I mean, we're sitting here, mid-November. I mean, XFL training camps, assuming the merged league doesn't happen and the XFL just follows their schedule from last year, those training camps would be starting in mid-January. That's 2 months away. And keep in mind, there's not just with the merger, but like we were talking about, Vegas earlier, obviously, but the Vipers, like they don't have a place to play. There was an announcement that came out shortly before the merger saying, the Vipers will not return to Cashman Field in 2024. But then there hasn't been any follow-up as to where they might be, in 2024. So another question there that I think maybe has kind of gotten shoved under the rug per se with, obviously all of the, merger. I don't know if you want to call it drama, but, again, rumors and speculation, right? We keep saying that. That's something that's been swept under the rug. So, yeah, man, just a lot of questions. Me personally, I still think this could happen for 2024 just because if you remember the timeline from last year, there was a bit of this time last year the XFL draft was happening, but they did push a lot of things, very close to the season start date, including a lot of the Vegas stuff. I don't want to keep circling back to that. I want to talk about other things, but like the Vipers, like that whole Cashman Field situation, that wasn't announced till end of December, early January. They had to push back the schedule release because of that. Like if you remember, the schedule didn't come out till early January. That was like a month before the season started. So while we are kind of getting in the crunch time here in terms of, we do need to hear something about a merger if it's going to happen. We've seen it before where these leagues can operate in a really tight window. And I don't know if that's necessarily good if you're going to merge entities, but, that's not up to me. So.
Yes, sir. That's my thing is, it's possible, but is it possible successfully? Can we do it and bring people to the games? Can you do it and have people buy tickets? Can you do it and have people watch on TV? That was the biggest downfall of XFL last year is, man, I'm gunned up, ready to go. I'm hype and I'm ready to buy tickets on Christmas, before Christmas. I mean, November. I can't. Come January, I still can't buy tickets. Is this thing legit? Are we really having a season? Yeah, we just got to wait. I think it was 2 weeks prior to February when tickets opened up, if I remember. I can't remember exactly. Maybe been 3 weeks. But, man.
Yeah, it might have been like end of January. I mean, again, they were cutting it close.
Yep, that's my worry. And then another thing, too, we got Houston sitting there, and you have a lot of these Houston fans wondering, is my team going to be here? I mean, we still haven't got any official word on that, and that is going to rub some people the wrong way, even if you do have the season next year as planned, because we're still wondering, hey, in 2025, is my team going to be here? So it's a rough situation on the Vipers end and the Houston end. I definitely think if those two factors were different, this would be a lot more transitional. It would be a lot easier to implement quickly, but with that being up in the air, I mean, that's a little rough. So I don't know, man. My opinion of it is I'm just waiting. I've tried not to say anything on air that's going to be taken wrong or be taken as information because I'm not plugged in enough to tell you what's going on, and I know I'm not. But I'm here to talk with guys like you who can kind of set the steering wheel straight and drive us on the right path,
Right. Well, there's a couple layers to these merger talks, and the first one that we've already kind of covered here is just the merger itself. Is it actually going to happen, right? I mean, I think a lot of people initially when that news came out, merger sounds great, but like if you remember, back when the XFL kind of initially rebooted back in 2021, they were talking with the CFL. Now, that was a partnership, not a merger. That's two different things, and that's where people I think get a bit confused. But there was a discussion with the Canadian Football League about possibly, having some form of, joint football operations. I mean, they weren't talking about, collective teams or whatever. There was rumblings about maybe an XFL Toronto team at one point from what I remember. But all those things fell through. It was a similar situation to this where, there's an announcement made. We're talking. Something's going on. We don't know what it is. Very few details. Nobody's really read in. and then it kind of goes quiet. People don't forget about it, but again, you can only speculate so much as to what's going to happen before you just kind of have to sit there and be like, you know what, like, I'm just going to wait until I hear something. And I think that's where we're all at with this now. But what ended up happening with that was, you waited and waited, and then they just came out and they said, no, we stopped talking. This isn't going to happen. And, I think, again, now that wasn't nearly as serious as what we're dealing with here, because, again, partnership, not merger, right? When people hear the word merger, that's a lot more serious. That's going to raise some eyebrows. And I was definitely surprised when that news initially came out. But like the XFL's had other successful partnerships too in the past. Again, not merger, but partnership, right? I think the most notable one probably that worked out was with the NFL Alumni Academy. And in terms of bringing players into the league, a lot of people don't realize it unless you really dive deeply into these things like myself and yourself do. But a significant amount of XFL players went through the NFL Alumni Academy program. And again, it was a pretty quiet thing. If we're going to talk about NFL Alumni Academy briefly, there was something that came out, I think on Amazon Prime, a new documentary detailing, the first year of that, I guess, which was 2021. And Vadal, I think that's how you say his name, Vadal Alexander, who played for the St. Louis Battlehawks, was a part of that, and he's included in this documentary. So, I mean, I'm not gonna plug Amazon Prime documentaries here on your podcast, but if anybody watching is interested in, NFL Alumni Academy and maybe seeing some familiar faces, I've watched the first 2 episodes and it was pretty interesting. But anyways, back to the initial point. That partnership worked out with the NFL Alumni Academy. CFL one didn't, so they've had their trials and errors, right? I mean, obviously the XFL in itself is a very experimental league. It's all about player development and, new rules and a new style of the game. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm still confident this is going to happen with all those things I just mentioned and considered. It sounds like, while the announcement about this merger was made in September, looks like there had been some talk since July. And the one thing that makes me, feel like that this, is a possibility for 2024 is, like there's a document somewhere out there. They had to submit something, for the legal procedure. They're talking about this, pending government approval or whatever. Like they had to submit a document. And my belief is that on that document is all the stuff that we're sitting here speculating about.
Yes,
they
sir.
got everything laid out, and which teams are there, which teams aren't. That's the second layer that I was going to get into is, the team specifically, because I think that above all these little nitpicky issues that we've talked about with this merger is the one that sticks out the most and is the one that people are really interested in, again, above all. So yeah, man, there's multiple layers to it. But I think, again, like somebody knows something. It's out there somewhere, and, hopefully again, within the next couple of days, we'll have something more concrete that we can really do a deeper dive into.
Yep. Like we were talking beforehand, I took a good break from the show just because there's not much news to discuss. I don't want to keep hitting the same crap over and over.
Mm-hmm.
So I was really hoping and praying we'd hear something by now. Even today, before we got on, I was just like, come on.
Oh, me too.
Something.
No, absolutely.
Give us something. And so, I mean, it is what it is at this point. You're right. We're just all waiting. Whether that approval wasn't approved, whether we're still waiting for that, whether they've decided to change the scope of things, we truly don't know. But hopefully we hear something soon. I'm going to go to the comments, though, because we had some comments coming in.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, XFL Mike G said, I think we'll know more after the CBA for the USFL Players Union Agreement is announced. That's a good point.
Yeah, and that would be on Thursday, on November 16th. So I don't know. I mean, I didn't view that. Like, I saw that date. Some people have drawn the connection between the two. I don't know personally. I mean, maybe it does pend. Like maybe something is pending if they're, coming out with this, now. And that, again, the whole another element that, of course, we haven't discussed, but one that was discussed, previously in different spaces was, if these two leagues are going to merge, USFL chose to unionize, XFL didn't, to put it simply. So how are you going to navigate that? I'm not going to get into that here because that's not my background. I don't know enough about that. I mean, maybe you talk to a USFL PA rep. I know those guys are great. But yeah, I don't know, man. It's a good question. Maybe it does indicate something. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I mean, it's a good point, but I'm not going to sit here and break it down and say it's valid. I don't know either. It's over my head at this point. I will say this though, and that was another point I was about to make. I mean, for the most part, it's still business as usual for both leagues. USFL seems like they have more going on though. I will say that from checking out their socials and seeing what they're doing, like the marketing with the season ticket holders come to events and such. And let me put some of that. I was going to show that on up here as well, because we don't see much of that coming from XFL, but we do see a few occasional player signings here and there. Let me see.
Right. Well, the USFL, had their free agency period recently, which they, promoted, of course, across, a bunch of social media platforms. In terms of, player transactions, things of that nature, the XFL, I mean, they've ultimately been pretty quiet about it. The one thing that I think, we could talk about in that regard, a lot of the guys, that had their rights claimed by certain teams over the summer, have signed letters of intent, to play with those teams in 2024. Now, what we can maybe get into again without touching on rumors and speculation. I'll keep saying that. But
You're
perhaps
good,
we can
man.
touch on again, I think the one thing that I do feel confident about, we don't know of any specific teams yet, but I do find it interesting again with this business as usual model, especially where the XFL is signing guys, to letters of intent. I don't know if all the XFL teams are going to be there. I mean, a lot
Exactly.
of I'm not going to go over the proposed scenarios because, quite frankly, I'll see it when I believe it, but the idea is in a lot of people's heads, and what I really believe in, just given my, gut feeling. And again, when you read the room, is, not all 16 teams are surviving this from both sides. But if you want to, this is viewed as a cost-cutting move, and because the USFL already had their hub model, you'd think that maybe the XFL might want to, be a part of that, which would therefore mean removing teams from certain locations. And again, there's been a couple different team names, floated around, that might not last into 2024, with the Roughnecks being one of them. I can maybe talk about that a bit once I'm done with this. But generally speaking, there's a chance that, I don't want to pick sides here, but it does seem like, the XFL may negatively benefit from this a bit more than the USFL will. And again, that's more of an opinion than anything. We don't have any concrete evidence to suggest that. So, whatever you're hearing from me is just my thoughts, not not anything that I've heard. But yeah, I mean, I think that's another element to it as well, is, which league, given their previous business model, maybe has the advantage. And if they're a merged entity, that shouldn't matter. They're operating as one. It's a
Yep.
single individual unit. But we all know, like,
Mm-hmm.
not going to pick sides, but XFL was the one that reached out to USFL. And that's something you got to keep in mind ultimately. That's not necessarily, I think, how the merger talks came about. That seemed to have been escalated through certain high-ranking individuals on both sides of the table. But like that, you can't hide the facts. There are, as much as there's a lot of rumors and speculation, there's also a lot of facts here. And one of those
Yes,
is
sir.
that, the XFL did reach out to the USFL first. We know that the XFL lost, some money. It was a significant figure, but it could have been more, right? The 60 million that everybody talked about over the summer after the championship game and all that. So again, a lot to unpack, but yeah, those are just a couple things. I will agree with you. The USFL seems to be a bit more, again, like the XFL, they're obviously still active on social media. They've been doing a lot of like merch promotion stuff recently, from what I've
Mm-hmm.
seen. Discounts, for the holidays, things like that. And then obviously these what you've got pulled up, the letter of intent signings. But USFL has been extremely active on their end as well. And I think that they have, again, between their free agency and things like that. Even when the initial merger announcement came out, it felt like that the USFL had a bit more prepared in terms of a statement. I think they had like the actual statement, and then there was a letter to the fans of some sort. There was a couple different pieces there. So yeah, I think you're on the right track with that.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly feel that way. And I'm a big fan of the XFL socials. I like how they do a lot of their things, and, they interact with each other and do different things. But that's definitely kind of fallen off a little bit since we've got, this info. Things have changed in terms of in the social landscape of things, and you and I can both see that as being active as we are, and even events like this. I mean, how much would XFL fans love this kind of stuff as well? I mean, what a lot of the stuff that I've seen like that this year has not been put on by the actual teams or the league. It's been like what the X Fan show did a thing where they had, it's a player come and do some signings and stuff. But the XFL is really missing the ball on events like this, and it makes you think: is that, is this purposeful? Are we doing this on purpose? Because this next year it's going to be a little different. I mean, I don't know, man.
It's possible. Again, that's getting into some more hypothetical situations, and you kind of have to write your own conclusion. What I really want to get into, I mean, we've talked a couple logistics here about the merger, but again, I've done that so many times. I just really want to get into my own opinion on the merger situation, because there's a couple different ways that I look at this. And to be honest, depending on what the ultimate scenario is here, it could affect me as well, right? Someone that, has taken or put a lot of time into, I should say, this space and this community, this league, whatever you want to put it. So I'll just start by saying I'm not against the merger. I'm really not. I think that if these leagues really are in a financially desperate situation, and we know that they are disappointed, both the XFL and the USFL were disappointed about sort of the reception. Like, they thought they were going to do better than they did, especially in terms of TV ratings. Daryl Johnston on the USFL side said that publicly. The XFL, I think privately, mentioned they didn't hit the revenue markers, and you've seen that, right? Position coaches moving into seasonal unemployment. A lot of their, I guess it's PR. I don't think it was PR people, but they had some layoffs, after the season.
Yeah.
Things of that nature. Marketing, really, I think it was. So, I'm not against the merger, right? I think that if these two leagues are really in that desperate of a situation and they have a proper plan laid out and they've really thought it out, that's the key here. They've really thought it out and they're not just rushing to a conclusion, that this would be sustainable for several years to come. I think that's all right. And I think that even if you have to get rid of a couple teams to do that, it's unfortunate, right? I'll say it right now. I'm going to be very disappointed if there's no Houston Roughnecks in 2024. I think we can all say
you and
that.
me both.
Yeah. I mean, look,
we are the guys.
I spent a lot of time even after the XFL season. Like, a big part of my summer, before I started working with the IFL, I spent that, I was writing about, rights claims and things like that, and guys that went to the NFL, right? That, like, there was still an element there, to talk about. But like, I'll be very disappointed if there's no Houston Roughnecks in 2024, and a couple other teams, of course, might be in jeopardy as well. I think that's a fair statement, regardless of what you've been hearing or what proposals been laid out. I don't care about any of that. Now, the one thing that I'm not very excited about is the idea of following the USFL sort of business format. And what I mean by that is, one of the major criticisms of the USFL, especially when compared to the XFL, the competitor, was the hub format. I haven't talked a lot about it here, on the show. And to be honest, I've kept a lot of my thoughts about that private, but just for the sake of this conversation, I'm going to open up a bit. The USFL, with their hub format, I've never been a fan of that, and I understand some people can look past it, but really hurts your TV product, when you've got like the Pittsburgh Maulers and New Jersey Generals playing in Canton, Ohio, and there's 50 people in the stands. Like, I just don't want to see that. In the XFL, I understand, like, certain markets did better than others. Obviously, St. Louis and DC exceeded. They were phenomenal when it came to fan turnout, sort of game day presentation, everything like that. But you didn't have a lot of that in the USFL, and even their better markets. Like, I think the USFL, obviously, the only city that they carried, well, they started off in Birmingham in 2022, right? Then they carried that over to 2023, but they expanded in other cities. But Birmingham is the only city that's been there back-to-back years. Birmingham, they saw a drop-off in attendance this year. It wasn't what it was in 2022. Despite the team, you could argue that the Stallions this year might be better. That might be one of the best spring football teams ever put together, in terms of personnel. And shout out to their general manager, Zach Potter, somebody that, I look up to very much. A lot of people don't know, but he's only 21 years old. He's only 2 years older than me. Yeah, he's 21, and he's got a fascinating story. You can read about that. A couple stories been published online, with Fox, and kind of how he got to that position, that young. But yeah, I mean, that team, fantastic team in 2023, had some amazing guys again that also got NFL opportunities. But the fans, it kind of just stagnated, kind of dropped off a bit. You didn't have the same reception. It wasn't as fresh. So what I'm getting at here, I don't want to get too off track, but what I'm getting at here is, if this merger, again, hypothetical, but if this merger, follows the USFL format, which is, again, we believe that this merger is happening because it's about money. I don't believe it's happening because of money. I know it's happening because of money. You want to cut costs. You want to have a more sustainable product, and that means being cheaper. You got to cut back on certain areas. The XFL spent a lot of money in 2023, and I was a big part of that. It was a great product, but you got to do what you got to do. I just don't know, like let's say, 4 XFL teams get taken out of the picture. You keep all 8 USFL teams, but then you only expand into like 6 hubs. And this is just a situation I see in my head. That's not anything I've heard. It's not anything I've looked at. That's just what I think about. If that were the case, that's just not very fun. I think what I'm getting at here is I'm fine if you take away a couple teams, just to make it more, again, you can only have so many franchises, right? If you're going to cut back on costs, but I think you really, if you do have to spend some money when it comes to, outreach, and like the USFL is going into year 3, whether they're a merged entity or not, and they still haven't put 4 of their teams in home markets. Well, actually it's more than that, because Canton really doesn't count because they don't have, there's not an actual Canton team. So anyway, this is a lot, right? What I'm getting at here is a lot.
No, you're good. You're good.
Yeah, I'm rambling on a bit, but
no, you're good. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just, I think, if they move into the hub model, that will be very disappointing. I think that's going to hurt them a lot more than maybe they realize. Look, great, the league keeps going. You cut costs. You're still going to have football in 2024 and probably beyond. But the idea of removing, I mean, I'll just use the Roughnecks here as an example because obviously you and me are very closely affiliated with that team. The idea of, there's 2 different ways this could go. Let's say the Roughnecks survive, but you put them in a hub in Arlington. People still, the reception's going to go down because the team has moved out of Houston. All those fans that turned up to your game, 10,000, 15,000 fans that came out to the games, those aren't going to be there anymore. And, are you going to replicate on that on TV? I don't think so. I don't think those numbers are going to go up. The other scenario is you just get rid of the Roughnecks entirely, and that, and again, that could be the situation with a couple other teams. You get rid of the Roughnecks entirely. So then you just had a team there for 1 year that disappears. And, for some people, that's going to feel like a waste of time. I know for me, if that happened, I would be disappointed. But, I always know that the stability of these leagues is put into question. And I was prepared for anything to happen. I said at the end of the 2023 XFL season that I was excited for 2024. I plan to stay around and do whatever I could in that capacity to help grow the league as I did in its, not inaugural season, but, return season, you could say. But, if they take away my team, it's kind of hard to feel that same connection. So again, I'm trying to stay, stick with concrete evidence here, right? But you do have to think about some scenarios. I think the general consensus that everybody's agreed on, and they could surprise us again with nothing, written that we've seen, but the general consensus is that there's not going to be 16 teams if this merger goes through and it's a merged entity. Which teams get cut? I don't know. Are there teams that are cut from the USFL side? I don't know, right? None of that's known. Nobody here can say that they know that, okay? Because, again, I talk to people in the XFL. They don't know that. There's been, from what now this is going back to more concrete stuff, just going off, getting away from my opinion for a minute, right? I just said I'm not a fan of the hub format. I'm going to feel quite distanced from the league if they go into the hub format. I don't mind taking away some teams if it means, the leagues can last, but I just certainly hope that they keep the right teams and that they have a plan in place for those teams, to succeed again. Because look, some way, like regardless of whether they take teams out of this, or not, someone's going to be angry. Somebody, people are going to lose their jobs over this. I think that's pretty, whether it's, you're out of a job because your team doesn't exist anymore, or, they're just trying to cut back, certain staffs. Like obviously the XFL has a lot of support people per their team. USFL kind of has multiple people, I think, doing the same things. Again, cost cutting, right? So, someone's going to lose their job either way. I just hope that, some of that can, like, if that sacrifice has to be made, make sure you thought it out, because it would be a shame. And again, this is another scenario. I'll get back into what I was going to say earlier in a minute, getting off my opinion. But, there is a scenario here where these two leagues could merge for the sake of lengthening pro spring football here in the United States, like an outdoor pro league. And it still might only last a year. Again, if they don't take the right approach and they rush things, exactly, and they don't have an accurate grip of what's going on because maybe they felt like they were pressured into something, I don't know about any of that. That's above my pay grade, obviously, right? No one really knows about that. But what I wanted to get to, that's more concrete. I think I've stated my opinion. I've rambled on for a bit, right? I've had my say. What I really want to get to is, this is more concrete, but I think, there's been some talks. I think a lot of where these rumors are coming from and the speculation when you're talking about, potential scenarios, those were things that might have been floated around earlier, but they could have been changed, throughout the duration of this process. Like I know
exactly
people in the XFL have been meeting. People in the XFL have been meeting, I think, the past couple of weeks, and I'm sure maybe they have on the USFL side too. People are talking about this, behind closed doors. That doesn't necessarily mean they're hiding any information. They don't know more than we do. It just means they're talking, right? There might be some things that they want to have a second look at in regards to, what this merger would look like. They might want to change some of the wording there, and that might be why it's taken a bit longer to hear something than we expected. So that's more concrete. That's the one thing. Again, another reason to suggest that this merger is going to happen if people are actively talking about it. They haven't just submitted this, to the government and went on vacation or whatever. People care. Obviously you see a lot of the Twitter talk and all that. Not something I typically engage with, but you see it, right? You see people's opinions. I still have, like I said, opinions. I have an opinion of the merged league in general, which I just gave. I have an opinion on the situation with the Roughnecks, which you're not going to hear a lot about that until there's an announcement, just because that's too much speculation, I think, for me. And, that's again, just going to have to wait on that. But yeah, ultimately, what you're getting at here is, it's a changing time, right? This is, for some people, it might have been precedented. For others, it might have been unprecedented. But, either way, things could look a lot different. And, the last thing I'll say for now is, a lot of people expected this merger to happen. I think people who weren't, as tied into these leagues as we are just thought, oh, well, this was a no-brainer. This was always going to happen. I flirted with the idea, in my head a couple times, right? Like you always think about, well, there's these two competing leagues, right? Like what if they just merged? That's a natural thought. But I just thought egos were going to get in the way, quite frankly, and I thought it was going to be too much to overcome. And again, I was very surprised when that announcement came out that they were able to reach some sort of, whether it was formal or informal agreement. The fact that they were even able to, sit down and have that discussion, I think is it's really important. Look, there might be some things here that we don't like about this, but it really does signify more than anything. People care, right? I mean, I'm not, until we have the details, I can't say I'm a fan outright of the merger. I'm not against it, but I can't be a fan of it until I know more about it. But I will say, if there's one positive takeaway here, it's that, two sides came together for, what some will argue the greater good of alternate football here in the United States. And, I can't argue with that, as much as, things might change and they might look different and you might have to scale back. I mean, if people are willing to come together that we're competitors and have a discussion regarding, what the future of this looks like, it does care. I think that they are looking at opportunities, and it's not just a money grab or anything like that. Again, there's going to be some people that are upset. Who knows? I mean, I might have some more critical things to say depending on how this plays out. But right now, we just have to go off some very general assumptions, and obviously we've had a lot of time to think about this now. This has been in the works for 2 months, and to be honest, that's something I think about every day. How is this going to look? What does this mean for me? What does it mean for the people I work with? What does it mean for the players? Because regardless of how you look at it, regardless of what you think about it, regardless of what your opinion is, this is significant, and that's where I'm going to leave it at.
Cool. Makes sense. And I'm not going to pick it apart just because that's your opinion. You pretty much set it straight on what you thought, what you envisioned. I mean, and like you said, I'm just concerned that we do this thing and it's not done correctly, and we rush into it, and then we shoot our wad and spring football fails again. That's my biggest concern right now. I mean, and the fact that there has been multiple meetings, multiple things done, and an official document submitted means that this is serious business. And obviously, me, little man, sitting here just wondering, I mean, I can rest easier knowing that, hey, that they are treating this seriously. It's not just they're not just throwing that out and just saying, hey, we might do this. They're pursuing it, and it's legitimate. There's just so much going on, man. And I appreciate your opinion on that. It's valued. It's hard to talk about this topic with certain individuals, depending on what you're a fan of. And we as media, we as fans, we as whoever, we're going to have to join together. There is no choice. I've said it. It's like a step sibling. Like your mom's getting married to another man and you got a stepbrother. Guess what? That's your family, bro. You may not want it to be, but it is. So just get used to it and accept it. Like I said, I just hope we don't rush it. And that's a lot of the concern I hear as well. From different fans and such. And I'm going to go to the comments now. I feel like this is a great time because we got some comments rolling in. But let's see. Gregory said he's got his season tickets for the Stallions. He's ready to go. Great seats, he said.
That's good. Hey, Stallions are a good team, no doubt.
He said, hey, I think they're really trying to get as many USFL teams in the home markets.
I'd hope so. Again, I don't know that. None of us really know that, but you'd hope so. That's one of the things that, aside even from merger talks relating to the XFL, I was hoping that the USFL would just do that on their own. Again, I don't care if they have to merge with the XFL. I don't care if they're their own entity. Like, I was really hoping that by year 3, well, even this year, I was really hoping by year 2 that they'd have all their teams in home markets, but that hasn't happened yet. So I still hold faith, right? I think they know. They're going to have to do something. There's going to have to be some sort of change to get their viewership up and to get people interested again. And, at least for me, I think, the home markets thing is the most glaring issue on the USFL side.
Yeah, for sure. No doubt. I've kind of gotten excited hearing about New Orleans. They're at the Shrine. You're familiar, I'm sure. They are possibly setting that up for the USFL season. I'm excited about that just because it's close to me. It's something that I can actually attend without having to go, across the United States.
Of course.
Let's see. Jay said, I'm starting to think the Merge League will kick off in April to promote and make a real push for February. Just doesn't seem viable at this point. The NFL merger took 4 years with the AFL. I don't know how it will work, but I don't know. Hopefully we will get one last season from each league if the merger doesn't come to a close for 2024. Man.
Yeah, I would say that I think a lot of people have realized now that if this merger doesn't go through, next season it could be the last. If it's a financial thing, that's the other. It's almost like, I don't want to say that they've reached a point of no return, but it's almost like, some people are saying merger bust, and I don't know if that's true or not. I haven't really thought about that element of it too much, but you certainly have to take it into consideration. Like, if the merger falls through, I don't think, I think there's going to be some form of football in 2024. I think that's a safe assumption.
Yes, sir.
Whether it's XFL individual, USFL individual, some form of a merged entity, one of those I think has to happen. More one of those could happen if it's, both USFL and XFL and they stay apart. But yeah, that February and April start thing, another interesting thing to follow. I mean, I think a lot of people are also in that boat now. Like the fact that we haven't heard anything would suggest that they're going to push back, the start date again, following the USFL format, which would start in early April. But what do we have to confirm that? I mean, again, like I pointed out earlier, last year, the XFL, like they did a lot of stuff. They said that they were kicking off in February. We didn't hear a lot until January. So everything's on the table.
Exactly. That's my thoughts as well. And then I'm just going to roll through these comments, see what they're talking about. Gregory, he said the hub model is what has allowed us, and I'm guessing he means USFL, what has allowed us to make it to year 3. This was the plan all along. Fox will adjust the schedule and have less early game start times. It's too hot in southern states in May/June. I mean, it is hot as hell. Alabama in May, June is a rough spot to sit out for a football game.
Yeah, and the USFL, well, what's interesting with them specifically, again, just as them as a singular entity, the USFL doesn't really have a West Coast presence. They're not spread out very much. I mean, if we hypothetically think of, if all these teams were in their home markets, Memphis, New Orleans, Birmingham, Houston Gamblers, those are all in pretty warm areas, in summertime. That's all south. So yeah, that's something to consider. One part of that comment, the hub model was the plan, all along. I mean, yeah, I never argued with that. I know Fox wanted to have kind of this rollout, but just from somebody that obviously follows these leagues a lot, I thought that they could have done it a bit quicker, because you're not going to capture, the same type of attention if you don't get those teams in the home markets quickly. Again, we talk a lot about, not rushing things and being patient, and but with certain elements, it's like, well, if you're going to say something, you gotta just have to follow through with it. Like I can't, to be honest, I watched USFL games last year, and it was hard for me to even understand, where the game was, because it's like, I mean, when there's only 4 cities being played in, I mean, you'd think that would make it easier, right? But with the, some teams being in the markets and some teams not, it's not a very good recipe. And I'll also just add this too, while this merger will be marketed as, and both leagues have already kind of put out a statement saying this, but while this merger might be marketed as something that's, revolutionary, and it's supposed to change the game, and it's a positive thing, you can't deny there's a lot of risks here. And the one thing that I can't stop thinking about is, again, like there's just all these little things, and we're not going to, make up things. We're not going to, say something that's not there. But there's just so many elements. Like when you're talking a merger, and particularly an equal merger, which is what the language was here, there's a lot that goes into that. And I don't know who had the comment earlier, but they were saying it took the NFL and the AFL 4 years to merge. Now that was a bit of a bigger entity. This is smaller spring football. I don't think it's going to be that can take less time. But I mean, there's a lot here that's just so fascinating. When it comes to like possible situations, it's hard not to think about it. And I think I'll probably leave it at that.
Understood. I'm going to keep rolling through these comments. We got some good discussion points. Let me go back up. I had one from Richard. Richard said, so what is going to happen if the merge is delayed?
I mean, I think an interesting question. I mean, I think the situation that makes the most sense would be you just have, XFL and USFL play out their 2024 seasons as they plan to before the merger talks. Because let's be honest, some of the things right now, we talked about the business as usual concept earlier. Some of those things, could present a great benefit if these leagues don't merge, because it would be a shame if the merger fell through and the XFL, didn't have rosters filled up, X many weeks before the season. But no, they've been signing guys to letters of intent. And, same with the USFL from the roster perspective, at least. Like they've had their free agency. Guys have been shifting around. They're still scouting and recruiting, making roster moves every day up until, now. So, I mean, I think, there is an element like the teams, as much as, it might seem silly, like the teams are following a business as usual plan. I mean, there is a scenario here that you can't deny. I mean, even if I think that the merger is going to go through for 2024, That's not a guarantee, just like any of this is not guaranteed. So you do have to keep that in mind, and that's why I think these leagues are following that procedure as they should.
Agreed. Denzel had an interesting opinion. He said if the merger doesn't go through in time, I think we XFL play in the USFL schedule. So basically, he's saying he thinks that the XFL will adopt a USFL type schedule for the next year. It's an interesting opinion.
I mean, again, if we're hypothetically thinking that that the USFL business model will be the predominant sort of structure of this merged entity, yeah, I mean, I think that that's been floated around a couple times. Nothing to suggest that's locked in, but I mean, it seems to be the direction that a lot of people lean towards.
Agreed. Let me look through. Got DeMarcus. DeMarcus said, I wonder why no one has considered just removing some home games rather than just cutting the teams. That way you can keep the fan engagement but save money as well. And in my opinion, this may be a strategy they're trying to imply. I mean, they're doing something we don't understand. So I mean, this may be something that's happening. As well as my outlook on it, it would be really cool to have like an almost old school, I mean, wrestling vibes, USFL versus XFL, WWE, WWCW type feels, something like that. But that's reaching.
Right.
But
I mean, look, I will say one of the cool ideas I think through this, merger discussion has been the idea of like, you could have an XFL conference with the teams that last, from that side, and then the USFL conference from the teams that last from that side, assuming that, the number is equal on both sides. You might have to do some shifting, but, I mean, I think we might have brought it up when it initially came out, but like, wouldn't it be cool to see like the Arlington Renegades and the Birmingham Stallions in a championship game? I think a lot of people that would create some fun fanfare. That's not a negative component at all, but yeah, I don't. Again, that's getting too much into things that are just thoughts and not really things that we can confidently say. So
exactly. Yeah, we don't have any concrete information.
I would love to elaborate on that more. I don't. But some of it's just it's too complex ultimately, I think.
Yes, sir. Agreed. Now we got Jay. Jay's going crazy, and the I'm gonna try to see what you're talking about, Jay. It's hard for me to keep up. All right, so he's talking with Mike G. Basically, I mean, this is the last thing from Jay that needs to be highlighted. He said, I just hope they do this merger proper. The promotion has to be big, and we need the proper amount of time to hype fans up and do everything right. And that's for sure, no doubt.
Yeah, that's something I could agree with without many questions.
Now, my thing is this: if they're hoping for comparable TV numbers, then we know and they know something has to be different. You can't walk into this year the same way and expect a better product, a better fan engagement. I mean, it's work on the ground. So I'm hoping as well, like the marketing kicks off, we go hard, we're hearing things, we're seeing things locally. I mean, so much can be implied there, but we just got to wait and see what they do. Right now, the fact that they've kept their own entity is respectful to me. People haven't just quit. People didn't just give up. They're really still pursuing whatever they're doing, whether it's the players, the admin, the coaching staff, whatever. So it's pretty good on my end.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Okay, let's move on, man. We're almost done. It's almost been 2 hours, dude. It's been a while. Last time we got on here, we talked for a while too, it seemed like.
Yeah, I think that was over 2 hours.
Yeah, I had to go to the bathroom very bad. An hour in.
Yeah. Now you're bringing that back. I remember that.
Yeah. All right. So last point I really got for tonight. I mean, and we've hit it a bunch, really. But what's your best outlook for the 2024 season as a fan, as media, as a close media person in the XFL? What do you hope to see personally?
Well, I just hope, again, I mean, I don't want to sound too repetitive, but just everything's thought through. Some of the decisions, I think, regardless of what happens, are going to seem weird. They might not make much sense, but clearly somebody's thought this out, and whether I, disagree or not, we'll see. I just think, man, this won't be proven for many years to come, but, I would really hope that, this merger situation allows, both, well, I guess it wouldn't be both leagues anymore, but the merged entity to continue for multiple seasons. My biggest fear is that this merger will go through and they just, only have one season and then it's a failed experiment. And then you essentially killed both leagues as opposed to keeping them alive, which seems to be the goal. But if we're just going to talk about 2024 specifically, I think the main thing, is just getting more, getting more interest and engagement. I mean, look, if you, had low XFL viewership, or lower than expected, and lower USFL viewership, and you combine those two, you might see an increase overall. There's no guarantees there, right? People could still, you're going to get that crowd that's, I don't want to put up with this change anymore. And, I don't know. I mean, I can't, as crazy as it sounds and as optimistic as I've been here tonight, I can't take myself out of that conversation either. Like, there's a scenario here where, I just, depending on, certain logistics, right? That, I might have to just focus on personnel full time. And I'm prepared to do that. I've been thinking about that the past couple weeks. I haven't really spoken about that publicly. Again, I've been pretty reserved with my opinions. And, people who know me well know that I do feel a certain way. That really, again, that's more team specific than actual merger specific. But yeah, I think for 2024, just, really getting the engagement up. The number one thing, there was never a problem with the football being played. I think from the personnel side, the coaching side, they've got all that figured out. I think it was overall good football. It's not amazing quality, and it's not supposed to be because the best players are in the NFL. So of course you're going to see a bit of a drop off. But it's comparable to, I think, certain levels of the college game, and that's fine with me. Like, I know in the XFL, yeah, there were some games that were duds. You're going to get that in the NFL too, but you had some great games. And the same goes for the USFL. There was some very close contests there and some rivalries, I think, that were created between teams. And, I certainly hope that all that continues. So again, there's positives, there's negatives. It's a merger, right? A lot of uncertainty. People are going to feel different ways. Right now, it's all kind of a mess until we have something concrete. And I've tried my best here, in the past hour or whatever we've been talking about this specifically, to not dive into the rumors and speculation. I've made that a key point, and I'm continuing to not do that. I notice how I haven't brought up a lot of the Roughneck stuff specifically on the show because that's more the merger and speculation stuff. Really the only concrete evidence we have about any of this is just the two leagues in general. Nothing really team related yet. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at on it, I think.
Yeah. I appreciate that opinion, man. And I can see your professionalism. And I could see when we talked about the the Roughnecks specifically, I could tell that kind of struck a chord there for you. And I understand because I've seen what you've done with that team or for that team. So I respect you being able to hold back and not just go crazy with everything you've heard or hearing. Because, I mean, right now, I can think of probably 10 different scenarios that have been throughout, and I'm sure you can think of a lot more. So it's better we don't confuse these folks.
Too many, my friend.
We talk about facts. We're talking about things that are legitimate. We're talking about opinions that, that we can control. But we're just along for the ride. And like I said, we're waiting, and we're going to keep waiting until we hear something. But yeah, man, super, super grateful for your opinions and your professionalism here.
Absolutely. I mean, look, I'll say this just to kind of round out. I had a lot of opinions here tonight, and I'm going to continue to have opinions, but those opinions are based off of my own understanding and my own perception of these leagues because I've been doing this now for a couple years, right? I've seen a lot of levels of this alternate game. It's not pulled from things that I saw on Twitter and all that. Like, I just have an image in my head aside from all the discussions of what this looks like, and that's what I've demonstrated here. So whether you want to call that a rumor or speculation, I think that's just Evan preaching the word or whatever.
The good word, sir.
I'm trying. I'm trying.
Mike G said maybe we should advertise during the Super Bowl. Real professional football. But anyway, we have one more question, then I'll let you go, dude. Jay said, honestly, do you see the merger happening in 2024? And Jay, you must have missed the whole conversation we had. He said, or do you envision individual seasons from both entities, in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, I covered that already. I think it's going to be merged in 2024. That's I won't go into it any more than that. I think it's just,
We're good.
again, everything that we've gathered, everything that we've seen that's concrete, right? Keep pushing that out just to make sure, nobody takes this the wrong way. That's the last thing I want to happen. I say something and somebody takes that as actual news, compared to just my opinion. But, yeah, I think, again, just my own personal opinion that they will merge in 2024.
Cool. And yeah, man, you're good. I appreciate your opinions. And people know that when you come on this show, we're not here to rant and rave. We're not here to get the likes and clicks. We're just here to have a discussion. You can like it or you can hate it. I really don't care personally. This is what we're doing. And that's what I appreciate, you putting yourself out there, coming and having these tough conversations. Because, I mean, it's not easy, man, especially when you value a team so much or a league so much.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, there's been two sides to this discussion tonight. I mean, the first bit, we talked about IFL stuff, which obviously there's a lot more there that's, cemented and that I can, speak about and that makes sense and that people might not know about. It's interesting. It's fascinating. But with the merger stuff, I mean, until there's a document that comes out, something that's released, a statement that has things laid out on it, I can only talk about it so much, quite frankly. And again, some of the stuff I said here tonight might be repetitive, but I promised myself not to veer off course from what I know is the truth, and that's where I'm at.
I appreciate that again, man. And I'm in the same boat. I'll have shows scheduled out monthly. I'll have things set up here and there. And this month I did not do that just because, like you said, we need something concrete. I don't want to keep doing this for 6 months, whatever, how long it's going to be. It seems
Right.
like it's just a little redundant. And honestly, it's splitting the fan base, and it shouldn't be at this point. We know we're coming together. So why are we not just getting along? So hopefully, we can kind of be the leaders and guide some folks to just, hey, let's all be friends. Kumbaya, hold hands,
Sure. Yeah. I think, from the XFL and USFL side, there definitely has been, whether it's necessary or unnecessary tension between, those two parties, regardless of, well, it really comes down to what league you support, really not what team you
Exactly.
support. There definitely has been some tension there. So I hope that, yeah, some of that will be settled through this. Again, as a media guy, I just stick to the facts. I don't really care about, someone can, come in my Twitter DMs and tell me, well, Evan, the USFL is better because A, B, and C. I mean, I don't care, man. You can tell me whatever you want. That's great. I'm glad you have an opinion and that you've actually been watching these games, because some people really just don't care enough to even say anything. So.
Agreed, man. Agreed. I appreciate you again, Evan, and I look forward to us talking again, man. Thank you for coming on tonight.
Absolutely. Yep. Anytime.
I got your socials there. If you wanna say your Twitter or anything else you want people to find you at, please just shout it out, because, like I said, it's an audio show too, and we do have somewhat of a following.
Yeah, I think it's all been covered, man. I'm just gonna say, go Nighthawks. We appreciate all the support. Obviously, kind of went from IFL to merger talks, so maybe I can I'm kind of plugging the IFL again here a bit at the end, but no, man, I mean that's really become my main focus here, especially through all the uncertainty, you could say, with the past couple months, and what was my sort of I guess what was sort of my main activity, which was on the XFL side. That's now IFL. It's a bit of a different game there. So again, that's changed, but I think it's all for good, man. It's all for the better.
Yes, sir. For the love of football is what I always say, but Mike G says united by football. I like that as well.
There we go. Hey, both are very true, man. Both are very true.
Thanks again, Evan, man. Let me know if anything's needed or if you ever want to come on again in the next couple months. You're more than welcome, sir.
Yep, absolutely.
Have a good one now. All right. Wrapping that up. Great conversation. Appreciate his attendance tonight. Always good to talk to Evan. Met him during the Roughneck season last year, and he's a professional and he knows what he's doing. So, guys, follow him, check him out. It's a good resource for information. I don't really have any updates on my end. I don't have another show scheduled right now. We're tentatively looking at the 18th, and I will let the socials know if that happens. But with other news and everything happening, I really just didn't want to keep jamming stuff down people's throats. It's always a good experience to come on here and talk to you guys. But then again, how much can I talk about without being redundant and just doing the same thing over and over? So I appreciate you listening tonight. I appreciate you listening after the fact if you're listening on the audio or just on the video format in any of the socials. Thank you so much for the support. Look forward to the future and seeing what happens with the merge, with the IFL, with everything. I mean, it's a great time. Want to say thank you to the XFL for letting me cover the league. It's a great opportunity. Regardless of what happens, I'm going to be there. So just make us proud. As well as want to say thanks to XFL Board. As always, good partnership there. So check them out. Follow them. Let me check everything out. Make sure I didn't miss anything. Nope, I'm good to go. Well, until things kind of settle down, guys, just be patient. Wait it out. Don't jump to conclusions. You're allowed to have an opinion, but don't be toxic. Don't spread negativity. Stop dividing the fan base if that's what you're doing. And the people that I'm talking to right now, you know who you are. We are going to be in this together. And if you're wanting to be in this alone, then you need to go do something else because this is going to be a team affair for us all. Like I said, guys, great pleasure. Thank you for listening. Thanks for coming. Look forward to the next show. Check out the socials for that drop. Until next time, peace.